like a precious birthday gift. It's all yours. Creatures are given creation to care for, to till it and to keep it, and also to prosper from it. So work is good. That's one message from this. Work is good, contrary to popular belief. Work is good for creation, and work is good for creature because it keeps creation prosperous and it allows the creature to prosper from God's blessedness. We prosper from it. And so while God gives creation as a gift for us to do with pretty much as we please, along with that permission, there's also prohibition. Because it's all yours except. It's all yours except for that one tree. So this means that we are characterized or we are identified or related by vocation, by permission, but also by prohibition, because within the gift there are limits, there are restrictions. And so the big question that always ponders my brain, why a forbidden tree? And if we think of God as our heavenly parent, what kind of parent leaves such a dangerous object lying loose in the nursery? If humanity was not supposed to have it, why is it in their playground? We don't know. We know the tree is there. We know that the tree comes with restriction. But in the midst of that vocation, in the midst of that calling of God, there's another voice. And it's a new voice. Not the voice of God, not the voice of mankind. Now it is the voice of a serpent. And what do you do with a talking snake? Well, apparently if you're a woman, you listen to it, right? And you engage it in conversation. And I have to admit, I probably would too. You know, I ponder, well, if I'm walking through the woods one day and a snake slewed up to me and just started talking, I mean, what would you do? Right? Be Dr. Doolittle. The Bible says it's the serpent, the craftiest of beings. Some translations call it the shining one. And most of us connect it with Satan, but it's really not, it doesn't say Satan. And they kind of say they have the same role as being a deceiver, but it says serpent. You know? Satan is actually both a name and an action of deception. But it's given to us as the serpent, as the craftiest of creatures. And snakes are indeed thought to be magical and mystical. You know, they can move without limbs, they can climb walls, they can climb trees, they can get in and out of the most tightest constraints. So we understand why it's attributed that they're the craftiest of creatures. But this serpent, this shining one, this deceiver, is a voice, a vehicle for theology. Because the voice of the serpent is the first voice of theology in all the Bible. You know what theology is? It's talk about God. Now prayer is talk to God, or meditation is talk with God. Theology is talk about God, right? And up until now, all we've heard is prayer and meditation. All we've heard mainly is talk from God, and we've heard a little bit about talk to God, and now we're engaging in talk about God. So we're dealing with theology. And God is now a third person, the disinterested other, if you will. And so the talk is removed from God through the voice of the serpent. And this theology begins not to try to define God, but to question God. And now we'll get to the required reading for today. Going back to the first verse of the 3rd chapter. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals that the Lord God had made. And the serpent said to the woman, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden. But God did say you must not eat from the tree, or the fruit from the tree that's in the middle of the garden. You mustn't touch it or you'll die." "Oh, you certainly will not die," the serpent said to the woman. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good from evil." And when the woman saw the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and she ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was there with her, and he ate it as well. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. And see, this is that crafty theology. The clearly defined command of God is now questioned. God really didn't say that, did God? He really didn't say you can't eat from the tree. And he stops questioning the statements of God and causes Eve to question the consequences. He said, well, yeah, he said we can't eat from that tree. He said, well, he might have said that, but you're really not going to die. He keeps changing the questions. As one person said, the serpent is the first creature in the Bible to practice theology in place of obedience. Instead of just faithfully following God, to start questioning God. And he engages in a bit of sociology of law, as one person said, in order to relativize the rule of God. It's a lot of big words. Makes me sound like this person thinks the serpent was a lawyer. So he gets a little sociological argument, right? To really kind of make these creatures question the rule of God. And he repeats God with just enough of a twist to make a compelling argument. And to make the people question whether God really wants the best for them. And even when the woman catches his errors, the serpent counters. And he ends by questioning the motives of God. Well, it's not that the tree is not good, and it's not that you're really going to die. God just doesn't want you to have it. You see? God just really doesn't want you to be happy. Because if you have it, then you shall be like God. And God doesn't want you to be like God. And so now, through all of this crafty theology, what was given as a command, what was given as a requirement, what was given as a demand, is now considered an option. Apparently, according to this new theology, with God, no really doesn't mean no. No means maybe. So, unconditional obedience is met with theology and met with question and analysis and calculation. And the serpent in the story is not only just another object of creation, but really the scapegoat of the storyteller. It's an attempt to externalize our own human propensity to question God. It's an attempt to externalize our own propensity to make our own evaluations of what is right or wrong, and our own desire to make our own path in life. And so they listen to the serpent and they act. And after they become enlightened, after they become like God, they cover themselves. And then they're questioned by God. Why are you covered? Well, we're naked. Well, who told you anything about nakedness? Wait a minute. You didn't eat, did you? And their responses are awesome. They're awesome because they are so typical and so reflective of human response. God says, Adam, you didn't eat. Well, God, it wasn't me. It was that woman you gave me, you know. Things were pretty good before you gave me that woman, let me tell you. Don't grin too much, Ryan. She's sitting right beside you. It wasn't me. It was that thing you call a woman. And God goes to Eve and he says, well, it wasn't me. It was that thing you call a serpent. And for the first time, the serpent's silent. The serpent has nothing to say. So they start blaming everyone else, right? It wasn't me, it was that woman. Well, it wasn't me, it was that snake. But you know who they're really blaming? God. They're blaming God for their own discretions. It wasn't me, it was that woman you gave me. It wasn't me, it was that serpent you put here. We could argue, well, it wasn't me, it was the tree. And that's what we do. Sin is not my fault. It's the way you made me. I lose my temper because you made me hot-headed. I do wrong because you made me selfish and greedy. It's all your fault. Sin is not my fault. It's the way you made me. It's the conditions you forced me to face. It's all somebody else's fault or something else's fault. We make excuses. We blame other people. We externalize the situations and put the blame even on God. It's not our fault. You know why it's not our fault? Because we're all good people. We're all, every one of us, good, devoted Christians. We're good people. But somebody says we need to get over this disease of seeing ourselves as good people. Because that's not how the Bible sees us. And that is not how God sees us. Maybe that's why Paul, centuries later, had to remind us, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It says it 3 times in that one book. All of you have sinned. All of you have fallen short of the glory of God. All of us are sinners. We're not nice people who just make mistakes. In God's eyes, we are all the same. Now, in our own eyes, we might have levels, but in God's eyes, we're all the same. We are the sinners, and we are the cause of the brokenness. Not only are we the cause of it, we participate in the broken systems of humanity. We are part and parcel of it. And no matter how good you try to be, and no matter how many works of righteousness you are able to do, we are all sinners and we are all broken, and we all are there in the garden, and we all share in that primal sin of the desire to be like God. To decide on our own what is right and what is wrong. To decide on our own what we shall and shall not do. And we know the rest of the story. That story tells us that all the problems of the world are the result of that brokenness, of that fallenness, of that primal sin. After that, life was not a blessing or a vocation, but really a labor. After that, there was toil, and after that, there was pain. You know, we need to be reminded of that, because often we forget. Often, we're like David. You remember the story of David? You know, after he killed Uriah, and his own son was dying, and Nathan had to come to him and tell him the story about the sheep. And David got so enraged that someone could be that selfish and that stingy and that greedy. And Nathan said, "You're the man." Sometimes we need somebody to remind us, it's you. It's easy to forget because it's hard to hear. But if we don't hear it, we're never going to really know the love of God. And unless we hear it, we're never really going to understand what Easter is all about. If we don't see ourselves as sinners, if we don't see ourselves, as Paul says, people who are at enmity with God, then we can't understand the depths of love that exhibited to us at Calvary. And Easter has very little meaning. And we will never understand the enormity of God's grace. You know, even here, at the creation of sin, at sin's first arrival, the punishment is not what is expected, and it's not what was promised. For God told them, "For in that day that you eat of it, you shall die." And then we pause and think, wait a minute, God said, on that day you will die. And so what do? Well, that's when we start being the theologians, right? And I've heard every excuse. Well, it doesn't mean that you'll die on that day you start to die, you begin to die. But that's not what the Bible says. And I don't think it's that we misunderstood the punishment, but I think that it's the love of God that seasoned the punishment that we don't understand.